David, welcome to the Colorado Food Magazine Season 3. We're here at the Broadmoor Hotel in the main kitchen. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
I want to make sure, one of the goals of the Hispanic Restaurant Association is to highlight the excellence of the contributions of the Latin community to the culinary world. The Broadmoor, as I know now, is over 100 years plus, 5-star diamond, 5-star rating, all these great things. And
That's right.
Everybody in Colorado and the world knows about this magnificent resort. One of the key components of that is the food, the culinary world.
It is.
And we both know that the Latin Hispanic community contributes a significant portion of the labor, back of the house, front of the house, all these different items. And here you're in charge, you're the executive chef, you run this great program. I want to talk about what you see through Mario, through Rocio, all those other people, the excellence they bring, and how do you contribute through your leadership, what type of leadership style you have to showcase and bring that talent up, because everybody I've mentioned really likes it here. There's a lot of tenure.
Well, that's good to hear.
There's a lot of, I'm not saying it's easy, but they like it. But good people like hard work, and they like to showcase their talents.
Sure.
And you guys allow that opportunity for them here.
We do.
So what do you attribute that to, your leadership and culture? What do you find? Tell me.
I think there's a lot of ingredients that go into creating the Broadmoor culture. You touched on some of them. The hard work and discipline in our kitchens is highly rewarding. I think there's a lot of chefs that, like myself, that want to align themselves with excellence. Good chefs, highly motivated, eager, enthusiastic chefs want to work around like-minded individuals. And we're very, very fortunate here at the Broadmoor to have that sort of culture. The Broadmoor, as you know, is a very, very large campus.
5,000 acres, I hear.
5,000 acres. 20 restaurants, cafes, lounges, and bars. Hundreds of thousands of square feet of banquet event space. And in order for us to maintain the food and beverage program here, we have a very, very large brigade. There's 280 chefs and cooks that work at the Broadmoor.
280?
280.
Holy cow.
As a chef, it's really rewarding and it's really exciting to get to work around all of those other like-minded individuals. We have chefs from all over the world that have all kinds of amazing, amazing backgrounds, that have Michelin star experience, hotel experience. They've opened and ran their own restaurants. This really, really diverse background of chefs. And it's contagious to be around those sorts of individuals. It's addicting to be around those sorts of individuals. And as professionals, as chefs like Mario and Rocio, you want to work and learn and grow in an environment that appreciates excellence. That's part of it. I think another really big part of it is, and it's a little cliched, but we're a big family. The Broadmoor's a huge family. Chefs, as you know, spend
significant amount of time.
A lot of time in the kitchen, a lot of hours in the kitchen, and we look out for each other. We take care of each other. We always talk about treating internal guests and external guests the same way. So the same hospitality and service that we provide to guests in our dining room, we extend to our coworkers.
Oh, nice.
And it makes for a good work environment.
Yeah, I can see that everywhere I go. That's great. I also want to talk a little bit about you, your background. You've been here 8 years, 10 years?
I've been here for 10 years, yes.
And you've been executive chef for how long?
For about 8 years.
And tell me a little bit about your background. We talked about this chef who you worked for.
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. I've been very fortunate throughout my career to work for some very talented chefs. When I joined the Broadmoor 10 years ago, I was working with Group Alain Ducasse. So I worked with Chef Ducasse for about 8 years, mostly on the East Coast in Washington, D.C. and in New York City. Also had the opportunity to work with Chef Ducasse in Paris and in Monaco, and work in some of his very famed Michelin 3-star restaurants.
You said something about he was had the most.
Chef Ducasse has more Michelin stars than any chef on the planet. Yeah,
really?
He does.
Okay, what did you learn from that?
A lot.
I know, besides a lot, come on.
A lot. You know,
we're talking-
I learned about discipline.
How does that play into this?
You know, I think it's who we are at the Broadmoor. I try to bring some of that focus and discipline that I learned with Chef Ducasse. I try to bring that to the kitchens here at the hotel, and that's us being better today than we were yesterday, and doing that every single day, repeating that every single day.
Continuous improvement.
Continuous, sustained improvement. You know, the guests at the hotel, the guests that come to join us at the Broadmoor, at the longest running 5-star 5-diamond resort in the world, have very, very high expectations. In order for us to deliver on those expectations, we don't get to have an off day, right? And what I mean by that is we've got to be 100% today. Chef Mario's going to go cook for 300 guests in the tavern tonight, and each one of them are expecting a memorable experience.
Right, and food bridges all cultures. What I really love about food is when we want to get to know people, what do? Let's break bread together.
Yeah.
And you guys do a great job about that. So I see you guys present. What do you define a good leader? What do you see in a good leader? What would you want in a perfect leader? Not a perfect, there's no such thing, but I mean somebody that pushes that center of excellence you talked about.
Sure. You know, I always talk to the chefs about being open and honest and transparent. You know, those are three words that they hear me say a lot. I also talk about consistency. That's another word that I use a lot when I talk to the chef team. Those are the things I expect out of the leaders that I work for and work with, and that's what I try to give to the chef team. You know, I tell them when they're doing a great job, and I tell them when they need to improve on something.
I mean, every human, I mean, we have this ebb and flow of who we are sometimes, but if we can continually rise to that level of excellence needed, it really makes a big difference. So what would you recommend? Do you have any books you've read that you would want other people to read, chefs particularly, or people involved in the culinary world?
Yeah, there's a couple that I really like. Andrew Dorenberg and Karen Page wrote a couple of books 20 years ago, The Soul of a Chef and The Making of a Chef. Those are both two really good books that talk about more than just recipes and food and ingredients, but talk about discipline and dedication, you know, perfecting the craft of cooking, what it takes to do it. You know, there's a lot of case studies in those books about famous and well-regarded chefs that came before us.
I want to go back to a couple minutes ago, because we were talking offline prior to this about the chef, Ducasse, talking about sourcing of ingredients.
Sure.
Talk about that.
Yeah, you know, so one of the numerous things Chef Ducasse taught me was to have a reverence for the ingredients that we work with. We've always thought that it was our obligation to seek out the very best ranchers, farmers, producers, whether that's here on the Front Range or internationally. You know, the scope of that changes sometimes where we're looking for ingredients. To seek out those producers of ingredients and work with them and partner with them and find out what they do that's excellent and prop those individuals up. They're the ones that are doing the hard work. You know, if we can source fantastic produce locally, or if we can find a great rancher that's raising cattle or pigs or something like that, and we can find those ingredients, it makes our jobs as chefs so much easier. At that point, we're trying to get the ingredients from the back door to the front door without ruining them, right?
Right.
You know, my culinary philosophy has always been very, very simple, uncomplicated cooking, ingredient-driven cuisine. Ingredient-driven cuisine is how I've always referred to it. And if you have exceptional examples of products and we're treating them simply and with reverence, it's going to be a great meal. The guests are going to have a great experience.
What drew you into wanting to be a chef in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, so I was pursuing my bachelor's degree at the University of Kentucky, and when I was in school, I worked in a college pizzeria. You know, imagine like late night $7 pizzas, that sort of place, you know. So it wasn't a gastronomic restaurant, but I fell in love with the work.
Really?
Fell in love with cooking, with making pizzas, with the culture of the kitchen. Just fell in love with all of it. So I graduated and got my bachelor's degree. Decided to keep cooking for a few more years, and finally had this light bulb moment that maybe I should go to culinary school and pursue this as a career. So I did.
So where'd you go to culinary school?
New England Culinary Institute.
Oh,
in
really?
Montpelier, Vermont.
What's your best memory from there?
You know, it was a really great learning experience, and I was just at that right age in my career where I was excited about everything that I saw, everything that I learned, every new ingredient that I'd never seen before.
Oh, really?
Every book that I've read. You know, I remember we were talking about Chef Ducasse, I remember going to the library at the culinary school and checking out the Grand Livre de Cuisine, one of Alain Ducasse's first books, and looking through it and just like not being able to imagine a world of that kind of cuisine. And I thought to myself, you know, one day if I'm really lucky, I'm going to work in a restaurant like that. And you know, it's a...
How did you find the restaurant group you're talking about, where he was Chef Ducasse was there?
So
supply, Lux, a mentor. Who mentored you?
If you haven't learned this by now, the food and beverage community is very small and very tight knit, and everyone that you come in contact with, you've got the ability to make a good impression or a bad impression with them, and you never know when that's going to come back to you, right? So one of the very first chefs I worked for in my career, a French chef, Bertrand Buchan, formerly worked for Alain Ducasse and knew the corporate chef for Alain Ducasse. And
so they recognized the talent you had,
as it
referred you to
works
somebody
out,
else?
10 years later, you know, was talking to Bertrand one day, and he said, hey, you should give Sylvain a call. I know he's looking for some people in DC, and that was it.
You did.
Yeah, that was
picked
it.
up the phone, called them, said,
That was
I want
it.
to work for you,
Yeah.
and then off to the road. Did
Yeah.
you ever think you'd be running the Broadmoor?
Absolutely
when
not.
You're flipping pizzas?
Absolutely not.
Did you,
No.
I just want to know, did you have the thing? Could you do
No.
the twirls? I want to see it here before we leave. So.
You know, I don't think that anyone, I don't think that any young chef like wakes up and thinks that they're going to run an organization as big and as complicated as the Broadmoor. You know, definitely something that you grow into.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like leadership. You
Yeah.
can't expect somebody that's out of college or a young person like to be like, oh, it's just too complex. It's training, it's learning, it's discipline, it's focus. It's
no, I think
education.
as a young culinarian, you don't even, you know,
Comprehend
you
it?
don't even have a comprehension of what that end goal could possibly be. You know, 25 years later, to be in a kitchen like this, to be a part of a brigade like the Broadmoor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I know
it's amazing.
I spent 20 years in the U.S. military, so I know, familiar with the brigade term and brigade and how the kitchens were first started and stuff like that. So what would you tell an 18-year-old you or an 18-year-old wanting to come into the culinary world and one day want to run the Broadmoor? I'm not saying they will, but I'm talking about shoot for the stars.
Well, yeah, shoot for the stars. You said it. You know, you don't become a great chef overnight. It takes decades of experience, and you have to have patience. Patience, patience, patience. Enjoy being a line cook for as long as you possibly can. You know, I think young and motivated culinarians are very eager to become chefs. And that's great. That's great to be motivated to want to advance in this career. But you only get to be a line cook once in your life, you know? And to perfect the art and craft of cooking, to work a station every day and cook and perfect it and do it again the next day and do it again the next day. You know, in the moment it seems laborious, but it's not a chore. And 20 years later, you'll look back on those days and reminisce fondly on it.
Back in those days.
But as soon as you become a sous chef, as soon as you become a chef de cuisine, your whole perspective in the kitchen changes, and you don't get to do that anymore. So young culinarians, be patient, be a line cook as long as you possibly can.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, what do you have for us? I mean, before I go there, our whole platform is to educate and elevate the Hispanic community across the multi-generational spectrum. We do the Hispanic Top Chef. I've interviewed several chefs from here, and you guys really do embody education and elevation. So I appreciate that from you, from the leadership we did before, and the Broadmoor in general. Our goal is to tell everybody, yes, you can do it on a large level, corporate level, have this magnificent culture. So I just want to say thank you for what you've done for the Latin community, for Mario, for all the chefs here.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Do you have anything for us?
No, thank you. It's fantastic to get to promote these fantastic chefs like Mario and Rocio. I see them every day here at the hotel and see the hard work and contribution, and not just what I'm doing for generation of chefs, but Mario and Rocio and the likes of these chef de cuisines. They're in the kitchen teaching and training the next generation of culinarians every day.
That's what I love. Not only did you teach them, they're teaching others, and those teach others.
Absolutely.
And that's that education, elevation, and that path of progression. Well, thank you so much for coming with us today.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.